Alright, time to talk about the axles. In this particular case, for this Carrera car, we ended up with, well, let's give it a check right here, overall length of 4628, 4629, 4630, however you want to call it. So that's what we ended up with. So what you could do for your axle of choice is you could get some of the slotted 48 millimeter, or 50, but the 48, and then you'll have just a little trimming to do, unless you like your axle sticking out like Ben-Hur on your car. That just annoys me. But I like to have mine at least flush inside the complete wheel, or just a few thousandths over. But everybody's different, so you could do that. But I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, you're almost always going to have to trim. So when it comes to that, as you can see here, this axle, this is my go-to axle that I order in bulk, a lot of them at a time, and that's the 65 millimeter slotting plus. And you might ask why. Well, that's because I never know what project I'm going to work on. I don't know what car is going to get rebuilt from one day to the next, or what new project. And this fits a vast variety. It also fits some 1/25th scale builds that I do using this bore. And like we've said a bunch of times already, it's easier to take away from this than it is to add to. I tell you, if this is too short, trying to stretch this thing back or put more on there, I tell you what, that's kind of tough to do. So this is usually my go-to axle, but everybody orders accordingly. But I will tell you this, you're probably always, like I said, always going to have to trim, and that's going to mean the Dremel. And that's what we're going to show you here next. It's not that big of a deal, but if you're going to start scratch building and rebuilding and doing stuff, you're just going to have the tools of the trade. So anyway, ours is 4630. It's trimmed, and now we'll show you how we got it that way. Alright, so my method for doing this, pretty simple, is I install a wheel on one side, and I leave just a little bit sticking out there, just a few thousandths, as you can see, just a little bit, and I'll tighten that wheel down, and then I'll put the other side on. I'll keep it a little bit loose, and I'll adjust it to right around where the Carrera is. So let's just measure that real quick, see what we have, and we're going to come up with, without the tires on, remember there's sidewall to think about. We'll talk about that in a second. 5504, and I have mine set for, let's see here, okay, we'll call that good. Now let's install the tires and test fit. So with that measurement, it fits inside the body, but not very much clearance here. As a matter of fact, that's just too close for me. Remember, we're adding some body float. Body's going to move around a little bit. Car might be lowered, and we've got a good chance of doing some rubbing here. So it fits, but as you can see, just a little bit too close for me. Now, the idea of sanding off this sidewall flush with the wheel, that's just not me. Some people do. I like the look of the sidewall. It has a good effect on the car. There's not really a hard edge here. Reduces chatter. All it takes is loosening this side. We're going to bring it in a little bit and test fit again. Alright, so I loosened this wheel, this side here, moved it in just a little bit. I'm just doing this by sight and feel as I test fit, and yeah, I'm comfortable with that. That's a good point right there. Don't have a lot of rubbing. Everything should be just fine. So let's just let's just measure this, and let's just compare what we have now compared to stock. So we'll zero this out, bring it here, 5405. We're 0.4 now. Okay. And remember, we measured the stock and we had 5509, 5510. Yeah, so very, very close. Remember, we're talking about also the sidewall of the tire clearing, making sure we have plenty of room. But we're going to work on this body anyway. But now, this is a good starting point. We know exactly pretty much how wide we need the axle to be. The easiest way to mark this to me is with a Sharpie. Just give it a little dot. Now, I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to cut it just a little bit proud, because as we're tuning, we're going to fine tune. So if I cut it a little bit longer than it needs to be, then I'll just simply take it over there and I'll sand it down, round it off, and make it fit perfectly. But again, like we talked about, it's easier to take away than it is to add to. So I'm going to get the Dremel out with my cutting disc. I'm going to cut this, but I'm going to cut it just a little proud, a little bit longer than my mark, and we'll start testing. All right, time to give it a trim. As you can see, this is kind of the mark we made at our Sharpie. Like I said, I'm going to go a little bit proud of that, a little bit longer. And my preferred tool is just the Dremel, the standard cutoff disc. I know they're not very durable, but they do the job pretty well on these axles. We've been using them for years. I do have a cutoff saw, but most times when we're at the workbench, this is all we do, because I may have to shorten this up. We might have to sand it, file it just to get it perfect. So this will work. So I just use good old Dremel. Like I said, I'm going to go a little bit proud, just a little bit longer than my mark, and just let it go there. Just takes a little bit. And there we go. And then, even though they're fragile, those discs, I just kind of spin the axle right here to deburr it. That's good enough. And now we'll test it. All right. So I have this installed and I've centered it. And you might ask, well, how do you do that? Well, you can do it by sight if you want to. And that works pretty good. I've kept the motor in place with the motor shaft there, right at the boss with the crown. But you can notice that there is just a little bit. And I want you to see something else. See that motor moving back and forth? Yeah? Well, we'll take care of that later. But for now, how are you supposed to check anything? Like I said, I do it by sight a lot, but what I like to do is just get it kind of centered. Put some pressure down that motor so it doesn't move. Now you're still going to have a little bit, but not very much, because of the motor shaft. But you can measure. So you go to the inside of the bushing, hold the motor in place. 1411. Let's go over here to the other side. Let's get zeroed out here. There we go. We'll go to the other side and we'll do the same measurement. Let's see. 1421. And yeah. So I've got a little off. So now I'm going to loosen this screw here at the crown, move it over, and remeasure. All right, so I adjusted it. Now we're going to check it again. Got our caliper zeroed out. We're just going to go over here, make sure, again, hold that motor in place. Not a lot of pressure. The inside of the bushing. And let's just see what we have here. Yeah, 1411. Give or take. Let's go to the other side. Oh, hold on. Got to zero out. And let's just see what we have here. That's good enough. So as a starting point, I'm comfortable with that. So now we're just going to go ahead and put the tires on and check for clearance on the body. Alright, so the real test fit is installing the body on the chassis and checking it. We're going to check our clearance here, and I can already tell, yeah, it's a little bit too close, but that's okay. The other side, still a little bit close, but we do have the float going on here, but this side's still a little bit close. So what do? Well, we're going to adjust it, but what we're going to do first is we're going to true these wheels and tires up, and we're going to clean up the inside sidewall. We're going to take a little bit off these inside sidewalls, not the outside, the inside, and we'll be able to tuck this in a little bit more. And then I think I'm going to show you, I'm going to take a Dremel to the inside, not the outside, but the inside, and reduce that plastic just a little bit. And then I think we're going to have the hot setup. But I just hope that, this helped you a little bit installing the gear, the wheels, trimming your axle, the chassis modification. This is all fine tuning now, and I hope it helps you. So we'll get to the next part, and we're gonna talk about some other modifications. We're not done with this Dremel yet. I'm just telling you right now. But so far, so good. I'm pretty pleased.